This is Project 14 Whodunit. So this project is basically just what is your thoughts on like who committed the murder. So first I'm going to talk about how I narrowed down some of my suspects. So obviously in the murders chapter, it talks about how Elegant and this person were apprentices together, which is kind of hinting like it's a miniaturist, and like talking about how the art style itself is very important to this miniaturist. To this person, it's a miniaturist. I think that's kind of what we've got. So recently we learned the perspectives of three miniaturists that Black was also told to kind of, and since he's investigating them of a sort, he's kind of asking them about the parable, about this question, and they answer with the three parables, as well as he's looking around, and the real reason for his visit is about like the disappearance of Elegant. And so these three miniaturists are Butterfly, Stork, and Olive. So first, Stork, he didn't really seem suspicious at all, not even in this chapter. He just seemed like a regular person, but like also it was not clearly stated that he like disliked Elegant, or nor was it like hinted on in his relationship to Elegant, which is why it's kind of out of the question that he's not in it, because it would have highlighted something about that in order to make such a conclusion about who the murderer is. You would have to at least hint to it. So then next is Butterfly. So the murderer and Butterfly both talk about the story of Hurav and Sharon, or however you say it, but the story about the son that kills his father and stabs him in the chest in order to get with the father's wife. And so they both hint at that, as well as use it to talk about signature and identifying the artist, which is kind of like, oh, make that connection. Another thing is that Butterfly is prideful, confident. He's concealed his thoughts from Black, which kind of makes him seem suspicious, as well as his like, I don't know, his little switch up where he was like, I glared at him menacingly. It's he's talking about Black in that sense. He's glared at Black and menacingly. A little weird right there, a little suspect. But also there's a clear resentment towards Elegant. He calls him like a plagiarist, a fool who only did things for money. He does not say that out loud to Black. He says that he's like talking to us as the reader in his head. Like this is his own thoughts. As well as he says this long quote about basically what Elegant, like people, artists like Elegant, miniaturists like Elegant, who would only focus on the fame and money and like got overcome with that instead of actually making the art and the craft for the real true reason. And I would read that long quote, but it is very long. And it is very long. But next is, so it kind of makes it seem like Butterfly is, but I don't think that. I think it's Olive. And though it's not stated that he hates Elegant, I'm going to explain why that's kind of important to it. So he kind of calls the world filthy and miserable, kind of like how not necessarily a murderer, but somebody who is miserable themselves. And the murderer is someone who's miserable at that point, because after they committed the murder, it seems like they're in this kind of way that they're like, everything seems like it's like in this, everything is seen being like bad, if that makes sense. Like he's seeing people left and right. This person is seeing people left and right as like as murder, as bad things, it's like liars, all this different stuff. He's like just seeing the world for what it truly is. And so he believes that it's a filthy and miserable world, Olive. And then the murderer also says that like they're justified in being jealous. He talks about how the miniaturists were jealous of him, right? Well, kind of you would think that's like pride, like Butterfly, but Olive also says he believed that Black was jealous of him and the other miniaturists. Also, something about Stork and Butterfly, they both welcome Black into their home when he came, and Olive didn't necessarily do that. He was actually surprised, like he was a little jumpy, if that makes sense, like suspicious of a sort, and wasn't really welcoming to him. He also says that, and that was that like suspect behavior, but he also has the emphasis of religion in this chapter. Olive has more, like he starts out with midday prayers, and then there's more mention of Allah. And the murderer also, that's the whole thing. They justify their act of why they did the murder. Like, they justify it because they see it's right in God's eyes or Allah's eyes. So it's like an emphasis on that. As well as Olive says, blindness is a realm of bliss from which the devil and guilt are barred. Kind of making it seem like guilt, when one is blind, guilt is kind of faded. Like you can't see it. It's not out of sight, out of mind, kind of. And so, which is interesting because guilt, the murderer himself, it's kind of emphasis on the guilt part. And the murderer also, he's trying to convince the readers as well as kind of himself, because he feels a sense of guilt, I'd say, that what he did was right. But there's one thing, and though you would think that someone who would hate Elliot so much would commit their murder, which is why it's kind of making one think that Butterfly did it, I think it's Olive, because there's no clear hate, yes, but there's some other stuff, but the hate part. The murderer does not necessarily hate Elliot. It's kind of like a confliction. Like when you read the chapter and you see his like thought process of when he actually did it, it wasn't like he did it out of pure hatred. Like you could tell that he was conflicted when he killed Elegant before it, like the moments leading up to, like he was so conflicted. Like there was even an instance where he said he would just want to end it and just kiss him on the cheek and call him a big oaf. He was trying to find signs to like give him the reason to actually kill Elliot throughout the entire chapter. Like it's not like he hated Elliot necessarily. It's like the murderer hated what Elliot did. Like the fact that he is going away from what they were taught, like their religion, what their traditional art style was. It was that fact that he hated that and not necessarily Elegant himself. And that's why I don't think it was Butterfly, because Butterfly just truly disliked Elegant. But Olive did not necessarily hate Elegant. He considered him like a friend. Like it even mentioned in the murderers chapter that they were apprentices together and that they were actual like brothers, friends. And so it was hard for the murderer to do such a thing, and which is why I think it's Olive. And though I know who did it, it's not necessarily that. It's the fact that I realized that from reading those chapters as to why I think who it is. So that's the end of the video.